Texas House Democratic Caucus Vice Chair and State Representative Jean Wu of Houston. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. So the Texas House Democratic Caucus is planning a series of rallies this Saturday, this weekend, in a variety of communities across the state. Why is that? And why is it so important?
I think it's really important for all of us, and not just Democrats, for just people in general, to start sounding alarm that the Texas legislature is about to roll back a lot of rights for a lot of communities, rights that we've been fighting for and sometimes even dying for 100 years.
And is there specific legislation, specific bills that you're referring to that people should be aware of?
No, absolutely. We have legislation that would create a secret police force that would round up immigrants. We have laws that would basically push Black and Latino students from having an equal chance of attending universities or employees being hired. We have more legislation that would strip rights away from women. We have laws that would ban books. We have laws that would censor history. I mean, we can go on and on and on. There's just bill after bill after bill that basically strips rights from our communities.
And some of these bills have already passed one chamber or the other. So what is the goal of these rallies that you're planning on holding?
You know, our biggest fear is that all these drastic changes are being made in the middle of the night, that the public is not even aware, that the public won't have a chance to voice their opinion. And I think the overwhelming majority of Texans oppose these kind of changes of such extreme nature. And we want more civil rights, not fewer.
And I wanted to ask, because I know one of the issues has been to increase the penalty for illegal voting. I know there are other election measures being passed as well. Can you talk to me a little bit about some of your concerns there? I know in the Senate version of the bill, Senate Bill 2, to make illegal voting a felony again, that it would strip away intent. And so that ignorance is no defense, is what that bill is saying. Is that included in this?
Yeah, absolutely. And our ability to vote, our ability for communities to express their voice and their choice is fundamental to our civil rights. And it's one of the most important civil rights. And anything that continues on this path of trying to scare people into not voting, into making simple, common everyday mistakes, turning those into criminal acts, that's what we oppose. We should be free to speak our voice and be free without just the fear of state overreach.
And you mentioned I believe it was House Bill 20, as far as the police force
Yeah.
down at the border. That's
No,
what you're
no.
referring to, right?
Yeah, and it's absolutely not at the border. This is, and I think this is why we need to have a rally to let people know how extreme these things are. This is a statewide police force operating in every part of the state that is not made up of police officers, that is unaccountable to anyone but the governor, and is completely immune to all civil and criminal liability. Think about that.
And so let me ask you this, because 2 years ago, the House Democrats broke quorum, and that led to obviously 3 special sessions. Are you considering such a move again?
Well, number one, if we were, we wouldn't be talking about it. But look, Democrats are going to do everything they can to prevent the rollback of these rights. I mean, these are rights that our communities have fought for, to be at the table, to be free from random police persecution, to be free from all these different things, to speak our minds, to learn history, everything else. We've fought for this so long. We're not going to back away so easily. We're going to use every tool we have available.
And you mentioned, I believe, the DEI legislation that was passed in the Senate yesterday. Is that what you were referring to?
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about the most egregious parts of the bill in your mind.
Look, there's so much in the legislation. The most important way to understand this is These DEI programs are programs created to correct the century of racial injustice and inequity for many groups, not just on racial grounds, but for disabilities, for the community who's disabled, for veterans who might get discriminated against, for any number of things, including just women. These programs were set up so that everybody has a fair shot. By taking these programs away, it means that the people who have been historically discriminated against may not have a fair shot again, going back to the battle times, that they would not have a fair shot of getting into college or getting a job at a university.
And I also wanted to ask you, you mentioned library books. I know that that bill is advancing in the House, a similar bill passed in the Senate. What is your major concern there that people should be aware of?
I think in the guise of protecting children, we are passing legislation on ideological grounds, that we're putting into place the ability to ban books, ban teaching, ban ideas that don't conform to right-wing conservative views, that anything that talks about Black history, Latino history, anything that talks about being gay, anything that talks about just other community groups that are not the mainstream are going to get banned. Slowly, piece by piece, one by one, they're all coming for it. And we see this in other states already.
I know that the Republicans have talked about in their books, they've really based it mostly on the sexual nature of some of the photos, some of the discussion in the books, etc. And it hasn't been, when you talk about, let's chat about that. I mean, what do you say to that? They say these books are inappropriate for the ages of the school, that they're in the school library.
No, so in book by book, there have been examples of books that should have been in schools, but they're using that as an excuse to do a blanket ban on so many other different things. It did not just include pictures and things like that. This ban would include not only things that people would say are pornographic or anything like that, but things that would be instructional, anything that just offends people's senses, that goes against community norms, right, would be included in the legislation.
And so you're saying that would even be as it relates to history, or is that part of what was passed last session as far as what's called CRT?
No, I think it's all of the above. All these laws play together and act together. I mean, and the CRT attack is not over. There are plenty of pieces of legislation that continue to go after not only what teachers can teach, but what books are allowed in the library on topics of race, and how to get rid of books like that. And we have seen this in other states where, like, books about Rosa Parks are being banned. Books about MLK are being banned. I mean, I know one state banned a book called "Everyone Loves Dim Sum," that just encourages and supports diversity. These things are antithetical to a lot of right-wing members.
And my last question to you, and I appreciate your time, Representative, and that is just as far as it relates to women's rights. Are you referring to the state's abortion laws?
No, it's not just the abortion law that was passed last time, but it's also new legislation that's being proposed right now that's moving through both bodies that would ban different forms of contraceptives, ban the abortion in pill form, that would criminalize all sorts of acts, including even assisting people going across state lines. Whatever it is, they are trying to restrict it further and further. Nothing will ever be enough for them.
And so do you think that these rallies will lead to change, or at least that these pieces of legislation we've discussed not pass both houses?
Look, we have to do everything we can. And the first step in fighting these bad bills is to get the public involved. The public at least has to put in its input, has to have its say. I think it's important for the public to come out to the Capitol and testify against these types of legislation. And our fear is that the public doesn't even know about it, that it's being done so quickly and so quietly that I don't think people even know, and we need to sound the alarm.
Texas House Democratic Caucus Vice Chair and State Representative Gene Wu of Houston. Thank you so much. We appreciate your insight today.
Thanks for having me.